People keep asking about my G.I. Joe custom vehicles, so I thought it was time to talk about them. The act of customizing a toy vehicle from the vintage era is nothing new, but it was something that I did not get into early on in my collecting. And it actually took me quite a while to pick up the first few custom pieces in my collection. Some of them were sort of foisted on me by people who knew better, and they truly did know better because they handed me some amazing custom vintage figures and vehicles. At the time, though, I was still trying to collect all the basic stuff, and when it came to Star Wars and G.I. Joe in particular, I was more focused on getting what had been on the shelves, so I had blinders on to the world of the custom. But it actually goes back a lot farther than that, if I'm being honest. When I was a child and they started doing variations on pre-existing vehicles in the G.I. Joe line, specifically Tiger Force and Python Patrol, I was a little disinterested at first. I only focused in on getting vehicles that I had missed previously. And quietly, I resented some of the gaudy paintwork that had been put on the reissue. So I had the Tiger Sting and I had the Tiger Cat. I was very appreciative of being able to finally have the molds of those vehicles, but I did not like the paint jobs because they clashed with the more realistic military look. However, I know what broke the dam on all of this for me, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen the video, is when my friend Matt Swafford and I went to Joe Fest several years ago, and I was in the market for a normal G.I. Joe Conquest. The Conquest was a fighter jet vehicle that I never had as a kid. My next door neighbor had it, and I thought it kind of sucked. I was more of a Sky Striker fan. I did not have that as a kid either, but he had that one as well. And I played with that after he got obsessed with his new Conquest. I thought the Conquest was small and sort of hollow plastic and rinky-dink. It did not have the shock and awe value of the Sky Striker. I thought it was a real downgrade. So I didn't really prioritize it in my collection for a very long time. And then after I got the flag put together, I realized I kind of needed the Conquest since I had the Sky Striker, the Shark, the Tomahawk, all those. It was a glaring omission, and I ended up at Joe Fest picking up both the Conquest and the Python Patrol variant of the Conquest at the same time from the same seller. And then I turned around and walked into this room, and at a booth set up by a guy called Nok'd Up Customs, N-O-K-D, in reference to the Dreadnoks, there was this beautiful custom chromed Conquest. And instantly, the Conquest went from ugliest jet in G.I. Joe to the most beautiful toy vehicle I'd ever seen. It was #1 in my esteem. After that, or around that time, Sal at 2 Cents Toys sent me a custom variation on the Hiss Tank. Sal, clearly knowing my love of The Empire Strikes Back, and by extension everything to do with the planet Hoth, sent me a custom, winterized, Imperial-themed Hiss Tank. He did this really cool job on incorporating Star Wars references into G.I. Joe styling. So now instead of the famous Hiss Tank 788 on the side, it is now 1138, the notorious in-joke number that's in many of Lucas's films. The white paint job evokes an Imperial Arctic landscape application, and the Imperial symbol is subtly placed on the back and rear quarter panels. What I really love the most about the way Sal designed this custom Hiss Tank is that it could work in both a Star Wars Hoth display and a G.I. Joe Winter display without skipping a beat. It walks right through that line. You could put Stormtroopers with it, or you could put Cobra Arctic Vipers with it, and it would look right at home. But it wasn't until Joe Fest last year that I made some major forays into custom vehicle purchases, and they were also G.I. Joe. Now, you might be asking yourself, Michael, why don't you collect custom vehicles from other lines? Part of it is because the other lines I'm either not that interested in, or I feel like everything has kind of been fleshed out appropriately, such as the case with the Kenner Star Wars line. There were a lot of vehicles, most of them were from the films, they were accurately represented, and in a group they look very complete. On top of that, there was really nothing in the Kenner line that I thought needed improvement. And as far as toy lines outside of Star Wars and G.I. Joe, I don't really see any vehicles in those lines that are worthy of going that extra mile to customize them and add to the fleet. Those toy lines are typically a little bit more compressed, or the vehicles just do not inspire me. In the case of G.I. Joe, I love the line so much, and yet because of the sheer variety over the years from 82 to 94, there are some vehicles that I thought right out of the gate were hideous. And so there's an opportunity there to see a custom that improves the situation. And that's exactly what happened last year when I went back to the Nok'd Up Customs booth and he had an X19 Phantom now chromed out in Sky Patrol deco. I did not have any interest in the X19 Phantom growing up. I thought it was a big, flat, wedge-shaped flying doorstop. The color scheme was getting very unrealistic, and the shape of the aircraft did nothing for me. To this day, I do not have a standard X19 Phantom in my collection, because I don't want one. However, when I saw the Nok'd Up Customs X19 Phantom, just like the Conquest, I thought, that's what it should have looked like the entire time. They should have made it look like that right out of the gate, and I would have raced to a store as a kid and begged my parents for it. The two-tone of the black matte parts set against the vac metallized chrome really sets the design of this futuristic plane off when you're looking at it on a shelf. It looks amazing now. And then last but certainly not least, in my second major purchase at Joe Fest last year, I picked up this G.I. Joe custom Tiger Force Sky Striker from Mechanix. Why did I pick up a Tiger Force Sky Striker after I just told you guys that I was let down as a kid by the Tiger Force paint job? Well, I kept coming back around to this. I didn't immediately buy it when I saw it. Not because I didn't think it looked good, but because in the back of my mind I was like, well, I've never gone after Tiger Force stuff beyond the things I kept from when I was a kid. So why is this thing speaking to me? Why is it jumping out at me where the other Tiger Force items that I did not have as a kid hold no interest for me to collect? And I figured it out. It was because the Tiger Sting was the Vamp Mark II. The Tiger Cat was the Snow Cat. I did not have either of those, and I'd really wanted them, but I was collecting Star Wars back then, so I missed them. The other item I really wanted from G.I. Joe that I never got was the Sky Striker. And the Tiger Force line did not bring out a Sky Striker, so I didn't have the opportunity to buy it in that range either. So I freely admit it became a sense of poetic justice. I thought to myself, if Tiger Force had had a Sky Striker, I would have bought it or asked for it to go with those other two vehicles, because that would have filled all the major gaps in my G.I. Joe vehicle collection. There was no opportunity to do so, but right here was a simulation of what that opportunity could have been. A beautiful simulation of what it might have looked like. And I decided I can't pass this up. I needed to have this as an illustration, an example of what the Tiger Force scheme could achieve, even for a kid who otherwise wanted nothing to do with it. Filling gaps in a vehicle collection is what re-release's main value is. And you can step across that deco picket line, metaphorically. Even if you hate the deco, you can step across that line if it's a vehicle that you have coveted that you missed out on. Even if the paint scheme is now not exactly to your liking and it's a little too brash, you'll still reach over there to get that Vamp with doors. You'll still reach over there to get that Snowcat. I would have reached over that line to get a Sky Striker of my own. And so just having this one here is such a cool concept, a cool what if. I'm really pleased by Mechanix paintwork. I'm really pleased by how he placed all the tiger stripes to make it look like the Tiger Force deco, which I don't like, but the effort he went to make sure that the gradient was accurate from white to rust to orange to yellow, just like on the original Tiger Force vehicles, that's a level of effort you don't often see in customs. And I was blown away. I thought to myself, if I ever have a Tiger Force display in my studio with my childhood vehicles, I would want this to be the centerpiece of that small display. So there you have it. Those are all of my custom G.I. Joe vehicles, these 4. Will I be adding to it? I hope so in the future. I am not opposed to finding another great custom to purchase, but I haven't seen anything yet that really strikes my fancy. So I'm just biding my time, being patient, and focusing on other parts of my collection. But I love the idea that I can enhance my small Tiger Force collection. I can enhance my Arctic G.I. Joe Cobra troops with this HISS tank. Or in the case of Nok'd Up Customs, I'm building what I call the Ugly Duckling Squadron. Vehicles that as a child I thought were hideous, but then when Nok'd Up Customs put its magic touch on it, suddenly I love them more than anything Hasbro ever made. And yeah, I'm secretly hoping I can expand the Ugly Duckling Squadron in the future. For sure.